And here we go. Welcome to episode number 22 of You Had Me at Halo, where we talk about one of gaming's most storied franchises. And today, and t- today we're going to be diving into what we saw last week with the reveal at E3 2021. And also we got some more news today, another news drop. But before I do that, I want to introduce our panel. Let's go ahead and start with our Spartan team. Joining me today, first up is going to be Spartan Mike, aka Mr. Kage Maru.
Hey friends, how you guys doing?
Good, man. Next up, we got Spartan Jesse, aka Don Cabeza. How's it going, Jesse?
I am in the middle of a monsoon, so if I cut out, I'm probably dead.
Okay.
Wow, that's escalated quickly.
And then next up, we got Spartan Daniel, aka Mr. Nadian. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, guys. Excited to do this. Figured I'd show up as Jim Morrison per Jesse, so ready to roll.
Thank you, Kenny Loggins.
Nice. Well, before we go ahead and dive into some of the new news that came out today, obviously last week we had some time to sit down and review what we saw at E3 right after the show, and then the following day as well. But it's been another week, and I'm sure we've all replayed a lot of those videos, many times, seen a lot of other people's opinions, maybe pointed out some details we didn't notice the first time. And so what I really like to just do to start with today's show is go around the table and just kind of get some thoughts about some of the things that have really stuck with you the most regarding the reveal last week, and what are some things that are most exciting to you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Mr. Mike. What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Probably the first thing that I'd point out is like just the sheer improvements of it all. I mean, I'm happy with it. That's the thing. Like I'm happy with it, and it looks great. The lighting looks great. Even things that I didn't think they needed to improve, like Master Chief's armor. Like the impressions of Master Chief's armor at the Discover Hope trailer was great. Like that got a lot of good first impressions, and then they come around with the armor here, and it looks great. Like it looks even better. It's got the wear and tear marks and the scuffs. So not like basically that's my first initial like, okay, this is good. Like I'm happy with this. That was my initial.
Well, it's just this is complete. It was very much like okay, this feels ready in a way that it didn't last year.
Yeah, totally agree.
So you're feeling a lot more confident about the visual style then?
The visuals, just the game in general. I mean, just certain things like the pop-in. That was a big topic last year, and rightfully so. That's managed wonderfully from what the overhand drone view, I guess. So, it just like Jesse said, it's more complete. It feels they definitely taken advantage of that extra year, and I'm glad. It doesn't look like it's unfinished. Even they did good.
Now, let me ask you something, Mike, because you've been around. We went through watching a lot of E3s, right, leading up to E3 2021, doing a lot of our look backs. And, one thing I did hear, and I think it's a fair question, we saw like some of the campaign, but we saw a cutscene, and then we saw a really, really high level, to the point where you can never zoom in on anybody's face.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts there? I mean, are we feeling pretty good about, like if the graphics we're seeing in the multiplayer, if that's pretty representative of what you see in the campaign? First of all, would you be confident of that? Do you see any reason why they wouldn't be at that level? And if they are, is that pretty much meeting the expectations you would have had for the game?
The multiplayer or this campaign?
Well,
both.
Translating those graphics from what we've seen in the multiplayer to the campaign, because like what we've seen with the campaign, we did get a cutscene.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, I think as good as the multiplayer looks, the campaign's going to look even better, and that I imagine the HUD and everything, what little of the HUD we saw does give a good indication. Same thing with just the aim down sights and the first person movement and how the locomotion works and everything, the camera. Yeah, no, like I'm eager to see more over the campaign, but I'm confident it's going to look good. You mix in just what we've seen, what little we've seen, plus what's out there. Yeah, I think it's safe to say it's going to look good.
Daniel, how about you? What was the thing that really stuck out with you? Now that we're a week removed from all that information.
Yeah, I think aside from the visuals, because I'm right there with Mike. I saw the promise of last year, but I'm infinitely more excited, no pun intended, how it as to how it looks now. But I think the two things that stuck out for me the most were, again, just we talk about physics a lot, and just the return of the priority of how physics interplay with the gameplay and the combat, which we saw time and time again in that multiplayer trailer. And I'm sure, the scene that they showed in the cinematic, I think that was intentional also to show the physicality of your interaction with the world, especially as much as we saw it in the trailer, like what we're seeing right now from the multiplayer. So between that and the fact that it seems like they're really listening to the fans, in the sense that we constantly both sides of legacy versus modernity in terms of fans finding a proper balance. Like looking at what we're seeing now on screen looks like a proper balance of taking away the armor abilities, so it does kind of get back to its roots while still having some new elements, like with the grappling hook. The clamber's still there, the sprint is still there, but the grappling hook isn't just like what the armor abilities were. It's an extension of that physicality. It is your ability to interact with the environment and to have the environment react to you. I think those elements really kind of hit home that this is going to be hopefully a Halo for both sets of fans, right? And I think, there's nothing that I've seen that gives me pause or gives me concern. It just looks like, the best dream of what a modern Halo that still harkened back to the originals could look like.
Yeah, and I think you, Daniel, I think you stole mine. So I'm going to kind of dive in a little bit on that. Because that was definitely the thing that excited me the most. We've talked a lot about the Sandbox leading up to this. And, just like that's really always been what's made Halo to me. I know for everybody it's a little bit different. For some people you talk to, it's the story, it's the campaign. For me, it's always just been about that, just messing around, right? Trying different things. And even as somebody who's put in over 2,000 hours into Halo 5 and really have enjoyed, that multiplayer, the one thing that really kind of struck me after watching that and going back to playing some Halo 5 again this week, because I got the itch to play some more Halo, was just, I guess you could, all of a sudden it really occurred to me just how grounded everything was in that when I was playing that, and as much as I really enjoy sort of that loop as well, and just how intense the combat is in that game. It is like a sport. It isn't as dynamic, right? Like I do feel like that it doesn't. Everything is pretty kind of. It's pretty fixed. It's like there's not a lot of
physicality. There's no physics application.
Yeah, variables, right? Like it doesn't feel very variable. Like if you do this, if you're really, really good at this thing, you're probably, it's really skill based, and I think that's one of the positives of that. You don't have that variability, and so because you don't have that variability, usually the better players usually come out on top, assuming connection, everything like that's even. It generally will. It is highly skill based. Whereas I think this is going back a little bit and adding a little bit more of that sort of dynamicness. Yeah, the random aspect. Thanks for helping me find words. It's like, Daniel, fill that in. You know what I.
I'm glad you thanked me. My wife hates it, so I'm sorry.
I need that today. My words are not coming to me as well as they usually do. But yeah, the randomization of it, and yeah, that's probably going to. I don't want to say it's going to lower the skill gap. It's going to create some more opportunities for just crazy stuff to happen, right? Like, and that's the other exciting aspect of it is thinking about, like when you saw them throw the grenade and, the sword goes flying up towards them and just kind of, and then even if you watch through some of the other scenes, watching some of the ragdolls and seeing somebody, fly through the air, bounce off this thing that breaks and flies in one direction, and then the ragdoll flies in another. It's going to create a lot of these dynamic opportunities for for video clips and just I think it's going to bring some of that back. I don't know if any of you do you guys remember like the old red versus blue videos, or where they would do like really funny things with the.
I still watch those. I still watch Red versus Blue.
You guys didn't watch the stream then last night because I was quoting it. So.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't. But yeah, like where they throw, you'd watch the Jeep go flying up in the air, like like the physics were just like they were exaggerated, right? And but that was fun. It was just like you didn't really always know exactly what was going to happen, and I see a lot of that coming back. But before I take over the show and just keep talking about that, let me go around to some of the rest of you guys. Like on this physics element, like Mike and Jesse, do you guys have thoughts on that too? Like aspects that really stood out to you?
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, like we talked about it before, where in Halo 3, where the ricocheted sniper that hit the fusion coil that blew up the traffic cone that killed someone with the head, that hitting someone in the head, that type of randomness, that type of dynamic nature that is Halo moments. Just like there's like Battlefield moments, there's Halo moments that only happen in Halo. And I think they're definitely bringing those back, especially with the physicality. And like I would love for that to also translate into things like, and I'm sure it's going to in the campaign, like imagine if there's a skull that you just name it, old school meme or something, I don't know, where you enable it and it makes the warthogs invulnerable, so you can do like warthog jumps again, stuff like that. Like bringing back the fun nature like that would be just really awesome. And you definitely see a lot of that stuff with the multiplayer, which I can't wait. That's something that definitely I think was lost with Halo 5, as good as that is.
Yeah, which was interesting because it for some reason that wasn't something that occurred to me until last week. Just that element that was missing. Jesse, what about you, man? Like any additional thoughts on the physics aspect of it?
I'm curious if they haven't shown all of the equipment they've said, so I'm wondering if there's other equipment. I mean, they've got the repulsor, which is the thing you can knock back attacks. You can hit people, or you can make yourself pretty much have a gravity lift style jump. So I'm wondering if we get some more stuff like that. That would be really interesting. Instead of just being like, you've got the grappling hook, that'll grapple anywhere, pull you towards anywhere, and pull things to you, whatever you hit. There's like no set points. It's just anything. That means there's a deep system there, and I wonder if they have any other ways to exploit it outside of just what we've seen of those two. That's what I'm most curious about.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, Jesse, because I've heard some people say, well, everything's got a grappling hook now, but I don't think everything's got a grappling hook like this. Like,
no, not as versatile as
they
this.
have bespoke sections
that
will grapple and pull, and they've got some physics on the swinging, but it's not a one-to-one, I look here, it goes there type of thing most of the time. Even Titanfall, you would hit a section of the wall, you'd be pulled to that section, and when I would just be messing around, I would see, it hits here, it hits this part of the wall every time, or it hits this part of the Titan and pulls me in the same way every time. So having a full physics-driven thing, like I'm wondering how it's going to work in Battlefield, because they've got one in there for 2042 that looks more bungee cord-ish, more realistic. So that I'm wondering, are there things in Halo where if I grapple onto something that's not hovering but is actually flying, can I use a teammate's vehicle and I whip around and I do some ridiculously long jump, like that type of stuff like we used to get with the invincible warthogs, and we could have grenades and we could try and get to places we couldn't through the physics system. That is going to be really fun, especially with getting into something else, getting into the forge mode. And if they've got those bots and you can create battle sequences like people have talked about, and I can have things set up so I've got unlimited grapples, and my whole thing is about doing these crazy moves around an arena, or in campaign, it's just on a cooldown. You always got it. So that's really exciting. Also, Blast the Base asked, "What is John Halo's middle name?" And I did answer him. It's Cheryl.
And
I mean, John Halo Chief Spartan answered him in chat.
and
I didn't mean to take credit for that. I would never take credit for something like that.
We have now completed the Halo Cats. Abe's.
Oh shit! What a brat. That thing is. Yeah. No. Okay. So, Jesus, we're gonna be that crazy.
Mark.
Yeah, we're gonna be the crazy
Yeah.
cat.
That's
guys.
where my cat is.
That's
every
not good.
single
That's
show.
not good for our
Oh.
Halo streak cred, by the way, you guys. But anyways,
She's right behind my laptop.
Are you kidding
while the
me?
exhaust heat.
Are you kidding me? Xbox even tweet. You remember the what they call it, the Chief Cat,
Oh yeah,
Master Cat? Yeah, that's totally street cred.
Oh man.
it's on brand, total, like completely.
Oh Jesus. All right. Well. Go
Really
ahead.
quick, one of the things I always wondered too, like, we looked at Halo 3 is a great example, and the cores at the time that the 360 were running were a beast. And I just wonder how much of the, obviously with 4, they kind of took off some of those cycles so they could focus on the graphics, right? And I wonder how much of 5 was done similarly to hit 60 frames on Jaguar cores. I'm wondering, obviously, Infinite's still going to run on
Right.
base Xbox One, although I still hope for an X Cloud streaming version like what they're going to get with Flight Sim. But I wonder how much of that was sacrificed in order to hit some of those benchmarks. And so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to bring some of that back and bring a visual upgrade on the base hardware of the Xbox One.
Yeah, because
That's
that's that's not scalable at all. Like that's basically what you can pump out of the CPU, and that's it.
Yep, exactly.
You can lower the graphics down to 640p, and that's not going to do jack on your CPU.
You're not going to create cycles. That's why I just keep wondering if we're going to get to September, October, and they're going to be like, by the way,
The campaign is streaming only.
I wouldn't even be surprised if the multiplayer was too. I mean,
Well, so far I haven't seen anything that couldn't be done.
yeah, we'll see. I'm
A very
intrigued.
large scale multiplayer mode they haven't unveiled yet. That would be something, I bet you.
Yeah,
And
that definitely would be something.
I
And
mean,
would love
they
to see
might
that
fork
happen.
it like
Battlefield's
Yeah.
already set the precedent by having their
Exactly.
player mode be next gen only.
I mean,
And they have their new server blades going, so it's just flipping the switch essentially. And
trust, I
saying,
want it
okay.
to happen. I really want it to happen. I'm afraid to get my hopes up.
They are the best setup for being able to push true next gen only stuff without feeling like they're leaving behind the last gen. Because it's like, yes, we know this isn't great for everyone, but it is an option for anyone with an Xbox One, anyone with a phone, anyone with a TV. Essentially,
Right.
you just have a controller, and we can give you the majority of the same experience. Like we can give you the next gen. It might not feel perfect if you can't wire in your device. It's not going to feel the best, but it is something.
Yeah.
As opposed to like what we see where like there's on the other side of things, the other main platform holder, they artificially just hold things off to say, look, we've got next gen only stuff, but the big hitters are coming to both because they don't want to lose all those customers that they already have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I wouldn't put my hopes up on that. I just feel like they would have had to message that by now, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have an uproar of people that are expecting that to be local, and I don't think that your average consumer is just going to be like, oh, okay, that's good enough then.
I can see a 30 frame campaign, 60 frame multiplayer with
Yeah.
maybe 2-year support, and that's even could be stretching. It could be a year support.
I would
And
say I
then-
wouldn't be surprised if they drop it to a year, given how quickly they're pushing out things like Flight Sim running via cloud on Xbox One, and how quickly they're doing the Series X blades.
And you know what? I imagine if that's highly successful, that's probably going to influence how they go forward with stuff like this. The faster the better, because if they can pump out an update or something, and that's the thing. I don't think they're going to if it's well received until we get like whatever the sequel would be considered.
Yeah.
Within the updates.
I'm expecting the core physics we saw to somehow be possible on that. I'm trying to think if there is any games that are that physical, especially up to we're going to be looking at big team battles that are going to be a little bit larger scale, right? And so you're going to have 24 players in that and more physics. Your vehicles are going to have more nuance to how they break down and fall apart and everything. Jesse, there's your cat. That's really going to ruin your.
I wonder how realistic or how well. I'm sure they can make it work, but I wonder how well it would work if there was certain. So you have like your SKU, you have your application, but then certain parts are cloud processed. Like eventually when they hopefully update the campaign, that maybe it's, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but like future multiplayer expansions, if there's a 100-player, mode, you launch that, you're playing cloud, but otherwise anything else is local. Stuff like that. Yeah. I would love to see, or maybe they just go ham and make it all cloud when it's moved over to that.
Yeah, Jesse, I did want to call out one of the points you made though about the grapple hook, because if people we had the video playing in the background and you'll see that come back around. He points right up at the ceiling and it hits a spot in the ceiling, right? Like it's almost like he's aiming a gun, and that's where it's going. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think this is a different level of. This is even that grapple hook is something that we haven't really seen. Tried in any sort of multiplayer game up to this point. So it'd be fun to kind of see how that works, how it works pulling weapons and things like that and items in the background. And, I think you made some good points about the Forge as well. And that's going to be exciting to kind of see that come to fruition. So I think we covered a lot on the physics. Anybody have anything else to say on the physics? For me, I thought that was the most exciting thing I saw there, because to me it screamed evolution of the Sandbox, right? Like that even felt next gen, even though it's going to be on previous gen in some form, somehow working on the.
We do have a quick question I'd like to hit in chat. DS Omen asks, "What's the deal with the Series X Cloud blades only playing Series S versions? It's because they don't have to stream in 4K." They're only streaming in 1080p, and it's like it would just be a waste, essentially.
Yeah.
I think the thought moving forward is, wherever possible, they'll stream Series S versions. If that's some way they can and that can offload the amount of energy and everything used. Because when you're running the Series X version of a game, it's going to be using more energy. It's going to be getting hotter. You get the Series S version, you're streaming 1080, 60, or even lower at 120 on games that support it. And then on anything that doesn't have a version like that, it's running 4 instances of an Xbox One S. And so that's like their best way to mix together. Okay, I've got a bunch of people here who want to play Halo. Okay, these are all going to be Series S versions of running Halo. But now I've got a bunch of people that want to play something last gen that doesn't have a new version. And they get 4 of those in one machine instead of just the one. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. It'd be nice just to get those load times, though.
Still get that. You essentially should. Still, you get the benefit. It won't be the next gen load time, but you should still get the brute force better SSD, better CPU load times.
Yeah, which is I think one of the worst parts right now. Well, that and 30 frames than anything. All right, so we'll move past anything to do with streaming though, because I think that's probably something we'll learn more about down the road. So let's move on to Jesse. I didn't ask you yet. Like, what was the thing from last week that really stuck out to you? Like, was there something that we didn't already mention? We talked about the
As
graphic.
a lore nerd, it was the fact that we now know the basis for the story, why they went to Zeta Halo. Like, they went there to use Forerunner technology to isolate Cortana, to then get her on the ship and kill her, essentially. Something obviously goes wrong. She's already been supposedly deleted, but from the what was it, the second trailer, we have the audio clip, which is essentially, oh, I'm Cortana and I'm back and I don't know how, which makes me think
they deleted the bad code.
Yeah. So, or yeah, so the whole thing with going rampant was there's a billion versions of her, but we only ever saw one and we don't know what happened. So even the whole domain thing, what is a domain? No one really knows. Is it they fixed her, or is it a fixed better version that wasn't a dictator, essentially? And that's what fuses with the Cortan that we saw in the trailer.
What the heck was that?
Nutana.
Nutana?
She's got that.
Oh, okay, yeah. That meme picture that's been going around.
Yeah.
Oh, do you think that was just to show off like the facial?
Yeah,
Totally.
She's learning to. I would take it as she's a new AI. She's learning to emote. She's probably based on an earlier brain scan of Halsey, so she's younger. So
I'm not gonna lie.
Old people are too lazy.
I'm not gonna lie. I like how I think they did a good job at like making this one, the personality just different enough, but still, appealing that in that Jen Taylor way. Like, she's such a good voice actor.
Yeah, just say like if you listen to her in this and you listen to any of her performances as Cortana and then as Halsey, like obviously it's still the same person, but her dynamism is just insane.
Yeah, the thing that stuck out to me lore-wise so far is I didn't see any Promethean weapons.
I think that purple one that ricochets.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
cannon.
Yeah,
that looks like Promethean or
what they're gonna,
at least
if they're gonna stick to like the right way to do it for the lore things is the Promethean weapons should be few, but they should be like mostly power weapons because their tech is so advanced that everything they make would be unbelievably strong. So they definitely seem to be more. We're not going to have version A, B, and C of this weapon. Version A, B, and C of this weapon. It's going to be more. Each side has different things that fit in different ways, and I think the Promethean stuff will be more just blow the ever loving crap out of you.
Yeah,
and hopefully those are the more. Because that one's got like a bounce shot, which is nice and original and stuff like that. So it'd be cool if the humans were kind of like modifying or using Promethean technology to create their own types of weapons, and that's the result we get. And
I think the Halo 5 rec system and all those really cool weapon designs they made was a good test bed for newer things they can put into Infinite. It's what I always hoped because.
Right.
They knew a lot of those rec variants in Halo 5 are more fun than exotics are in Destiny for me. Like they're just they play really well and they're really cool, different takes on things. So I really hope they push that more, especially in the campaign.
Yeah, and we'll end up getting into some of that stuff too. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to kind of play around with things and put things in the game and take them out, and we'll get into all that here shortly. But before we do go to this update, because this week's update does touch a lot about the multiplayer and how the seasons and things like that will work, and I think we can talk about some of the potential there. But before I head off there, I do want to just come back around really quickly. Single player. So, obviously we saw the flyover. Did anybody kind of look at that more closely since we saw it live last week? Did you any kind of extra thoughts on that, or the campaigns?
The one thing you noticed is it was definitely like look at how reactive things are, because as the Pelican's going over the brutes, they start looking
Yeah,
up and
they're
getting angry.
reacting.
Right.
And in one corner, it looked like there might have been a brute corpse, so maybe that was Greg.
Yeah, I noticed all that too.
Somebody will have to zoom in and see if the LODs fail
here-
to load and verify.
It looked real nice in 4K, like real nice. Very,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just so clean. Everything about that engine is really clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very high image quality.
And like something that, part of the physicality and the reactivity is, it's subtle, but it's something that people seem to take for granted, but just the interaction with the weather systems, like the wind that you see in that flyover, and like when that Pelican does fly over, you see the reactivity from its propulsion jets. We saw another game this week on another platform that was always touted as really pretty, but then you look at the world and it's essentially void of any collision detection, any reactivity to. I mean, there didn't seem to be any systems whatsoever running in terms of foliage interaction, things like that. So it's one of those things that it's easy to take for granted because it is so common. But when you've got another AAA title that doesn't do that type of stuff, it's really obvious that it's one of those things that I think they've talked about in their updates about why weather and lighting and all those things play into creating this variable experience and why it's such a big deal. And I think that's the other element of the, because that is part of the physics engine. And so seeing that type of stuff is it's very, very, again, subtle, but it's such an important element to world building. Making it feel
Absolutely.
like you're there.
And just like the replayability too, right? Like just and for people, like I think it's easy to just assume everybody's kind of caught up on that, but for those that are listening that haven't watched every single show, and we've been taking a look at all the updates that have come out since July, and really, when did they start this? They were doing the monthly updates for quite a while. And a lot of it did talk about the dynamic aspects of the world, like the time of day lighting, the way that the AI is supposed to react different depending on what's going on with the lighting and all the surroundings. And so Jesse, when you made that call out, that was something I didn't even pick up. But that's interesting, and that was something that when Chris Lee was part of the team still, he did mention that a lot of the engine rebuild had to do with the AI. And that's something they haven't really had a chance to show off. They've talked about it in some of the things just briefly, and hopefully we get to see some of that, sometime soon. And it'd be interesting to see how they can make all that, again, going back to those Jaguar cores, getting all that stuff to work on that. When you start talking about the physics, the lighting, the dynamicness of even the audio and things like that. And then, you have that flyover, and I'm looking and I'm like, well, this, like, look at the sight lines and things like that you're going to have in those open environments. Like that, there's open world, and then there's open world. Like you have open world games that are often you're out in a bare field for a long time with not a lot of stuff going on, and then you get into like a town, or you get into like an area, like I think Assassin's Creed, then you're blocked off by buildings and there's a handful of enemies in between them. And so this really kind of it seems like it leaves a lot of opportunity to go get up high on a cliff, grapple your way up there and zoom down and snipe some Covenant way out in the distance. And I'll be curious to see how they start to respond. Like, are we going to get different reactions, and are they going to scatter differently? And that was always kind of fun. And even in the original Halo CE, is some of those open areas, and you kind of break them up and they start chasing you all around the map, and it wouldn't be the same way every time, right? Like,
Right.
You never knew what direction they're going to go in the next time you did the checkpoint. So a lot of possibilities, and I wanted to just kind of call that out as a reminder that when you're looking down at that, and and people say, well, it doesn't look next gen, or things like that. And I think people have been more positive lately, but I think leading up to it, it's like, well, why did they go with the simpler art style? And the nice thing about graphics, they'll continue to scale. They'll be able to continue to scale those upwards over time. But it's that foundation piece of physics and AI and just really how are they building out this game design. That's the stuff. The game design's not going to be able to. I mean, I guess it could evolve, but that's going to be more set, right? Like that's going to be the foundation to kind of build upon. And I think as the technology gets better for the different hardwares over the next few years, at least they're going to be building off of. They're going to be balancing this game for the extra physics, for whatever they do with the AI, whatever they do with the time of day, and things like that. So that's I'm really happy with
the old chestnut about tools. As they get all of the GDK and RDNA2 up and running, then that really should give them a lot more headroom to push things further as they're in this long plan, which they actually talked about a bit at the in the blog post today, which is like they've got an idea of where things are going to be, of what they want to do. And I do think eventually, since they've already got them up and running, they will drop previous gen from especially single player or any new modes. The multiplayer, they can keep arena, they can keep basic big team battle going the whole time on both. But the newer stuff, expansions, anything they put into the game, they will be able to push it so much harder once they're on the new hardware, and the new hardware's tools are more matured. It's a legit thing that people think of as an excuse, but it really will matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the graphics can scale upwards. It's really how they're going to balance that game design. So,
well, I do wonder how things are like that are going to evolve, because to take advantage of really take advantage of the SSDs, you need to have the proper data structures and how your code is set, and that's likely not entirely the case, for Halo at this time, with a lot of its design.
Almost nothing's really using direct storage all the way, right?
No, but that's the thing. I'm curious to see how the game evolves, is what I'm saying, because usually that type of stuff is saved for a sequel instead of inserted into an existing game. But with this being that 10-year platform thing, and I'm assuming, and I think a lot of people are assuming that the sequels to the campaign are going to be like expansions or whatever, updates to the existing platform, and so I'm just wondering, are we gonna? It's gonna be then we're gonna see there's a lot of interesting ways that this whole thing can play out.
I would imagine they've already forked their code, right? I mean, they've already the engine was built from the get-go to be next gen supported. So I would wager they've probably already laid the groundwork to be able to dump that old code set from the physics engine and whatnot when it's time to cut the cord. And I don't know. I think we've seen games like World of Warcraft. We've already got real life analogs to the exact thing that we're talking about. We're just talking about applying it to newer technologies, and so I think I'm not so much worried about that. I think that they've already kind of been planning for the inevitable last gen drop, and so I wouldn't be surprised if they've already got that whole code branch set up to, the moment they can cut off some of this code and start taking advantages of the additional CUs and whatnot to whether it be for ray tracing or whatever. I'm sure they've already got that groundwork laid.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of sequels versus DLC is almost getting into semantics at this point, because you think about Destiny, right? Like what was it, like Taken King was next gen only, and that was a DLC, and for a lot of people,
Rise of Iron.
Taken King was Rise of Iron.
Rise of Iron.
Oh, Rise of Iron. Okay, I wasn't playing Destiny 1. I was listening to people play Destiny. So I'm frauding. I'm frauding right now. But yeah, I really didn't play Destiny.
Actually,
I was a little bit pissy about the fact that they were holding content for a year, and I was like, I'm not giving them my money. So I stuck with it, guys. But until Destiny 2. But yeah, I mean, but again, kind of going back to that, that's something they did is they eventually broke off, and they even said the developers had allowed them to do different things once they did. So that'll be interesting. But I guess we can start to move forward. There are some other things to touch on. I think we can come back to that in some future episodes, though. Like obviously they did show a lot of different pickups on the map and different equipment, and which is a little bit more of a callback to 3. We can kind of talk about some of the things that are 3, some of the things that might look like Halo 5 or 4. It seems like there was a really interesting blend of the different Halos in there. And what's interesting is hearing some people think it's more, people that are fans of classic are like, oh, this feels more like a classic, and and then some people that like the faster pace, we're seeing some of that in there. So I think that'd be a good topic, maybe in the next episode. But I do want to make sure we get a chance to cover some of the new bits they dropped on the website today. Any other thoughts before I move on from that, though, you guys?
Nope.
Okay. By the way, I feel like I'm starting to lose my voice. It's probably because I was screaming over myself as I was hearing myself to begin on the show. So I apologize to anybody if I was screaming, but I was hearing my own voice in my headset. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of the key bits of this. And I think one of the biggest bits when it comes to Halo, the multiplayer, is going to be the seasons. And actually, you know what, Daniel, if you have it pulled up, I'm going to let you read it since I'm losing my voice.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
So the first thing that I really wanted to highlight about the seasons before we kind of dig into some of the other elements was a quote from Chris Blom on the team. This one really stuck with me because he said, there's one note from Ryan in regard to seasons that I'd like to jump in on. We want players to have cool content, activities, events, and rewards over the course of the season, but we do not want to demand the players play a ton of hours every week of the season to complete everything. We want players having fun in Halo, not grinding it like it's a job. And I think that's something that, I feel like Infinite, and they've discussed it in here, is really kind of in a way that we always talk about Halo setting the bar for the industry. They're kind of doing it here because they talk about, yet again, they reiterate the fact that the battle passes, when a new season hits, you still have access to that old battle pass, whether you are accessing the free version or if you're using the paid version, you still have access to it. They are going to be roughly 3 months. They took a look at kind of the industry and saw how 1 month is way too short for a lot of people, because then you're constantly feeling like you're pulling the rug from underneath people's feet, and then if it's too long, then you kind of run out of things to do. So they said right now they're going to kick off with every three months is going to be a new season. Let's see, they're focusing on adding to the player experience. So kind of like what I was saying there, they want to experiment, learn, listen to the feedback with every release, and then apply those learnings to the next season. There was a weird, I guess for some reason people think that means that only hot fixes will only come out every 3 months. Yeah. That is something that they explicitly attack, that says no, we're not going to wait 3 months to put out a hot fix. We've got a special team, the response team, that will take care of those as those come in. So I think those are the main things. Jesse, no, I think that's it. Yeah, Jesse, did I miss anything right off the top of your head?
They did reiterate it's the Heroes of Reach is the first season, so it'll be Reach themed stuff. Other than that, it was pretty much like the Battle Pass hits. You've got the free tier, you've got the paid tier,
right,
and then you don't have to buy it right away. It'll never go away, and if you buy it, it never expires. So those two things should be industry-wide. It's really stupid that they haven't been. It is totally a FOMO. There is no valid reason for it in game because all those items have to stay. It's not like they remove those items and you gain space or something. It's stupid. Exactly.
That's one of the reasons that I highlighted that quote, because that I play a lot of 76. I play a lot of Sea of Thieves with my wife as well, and the new season for Pirates of the Caribbean just came out, and we didn't get to 100, so we lost those last 10 levels worth of content to access. And I think that this is Abe and Miles and I talked about a couple podcasts back about how Halo's best when it's kind of doing its own thing and setting the course of the
Yeah.
industry, whether that be with Forge, whether that be with the health system in 2, or
matchmaking.
Matchmaking, the 2 weapon systems spawned from Halo. You go through the list, and it's like Halo's best when it's setting the standard.
Yep.
And this is, I'm sure we're going to see modes and we're going to see other things that this game does that sets the new standard. But this right here is one of, we always talk about how kind of pro-consumer Xbox has become, and this is a clear indication that's not changing. The fact that you don't have that FOMO, the fact that you always have access to previous seasons, and you can still buy previous seasons when that season's over, is a huge deal.
Yeah, no, and FOMO is the word that they used a lot, and so out of everybody here, like, who here really has dived into season passes previously in other games? Any of you guys? Have you? Okay.
Just a couple. Sea of Thieves in 76. I think I bought one for Apex one time, and then I realized I don't play that enough to warrant buying it. But it's something that it has to be a game that I really care about, and that has content that I deem worthy of my money and the time. And most of them I feel like don't. So that's why this is such a nice change.
Jesse, you wanted to say something?
I did them a lot, almost every time in Rocket League when I was playing that a ton, and they were easy to max out for the most part. So I didn't mind those. I've done them in Destiny because it's the only way the game's worth playing. So if I'm going to go back and play Destiny, you essentially have to get a season pass at the start of everything. I did them in the Division 2 because I was playing the ever-loving crap out of that, and they were good, easy to max out. So, but there are ones in pretty much any of the Battle Royale ones, or so many of them are just designed to entice you to then buy more of the premium currency you need to get the stuff that's better in the store. The nice thing about the Master Chief Collection one has been you just get those tokens and unlock what you want, and if it's anything similar like that, it just doesn't feel like there's this incentive because there's so little time that I have to really grind it and I have to get everything, or it's gone forever. And even there's paid stuff that's really cool that ties into the other paid stuff you already paid for in the season pass. And it's just they're normally garbage for the most part. And this system seems like it'll actually be okay.
Yeah, I forgot. You just reminded me, Jesse. We used to buy them for Destiny, and then I was just like, man, I don't even know why.
Those really weren't good. See, and now what's annoying is the last 2 have been very good in Destiny.
Oh, yeah. They already lost me.
Too late. Yeah, they lost them because they were bad.
I've always rejected them, and it's because it almost made me feel like I was going to need a job. And, as somebody who's now gotten into the whole Game Pass thing, where there was a time in the past, I would say some years, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I would just play a couple games and that would be it. But since Game Pass has come out, I feel like now I want to try all these different games that I got the subscription for. And I look at Destiny, it's like, I'm not going to pay you so I can have a video game job. I know people like that stuff. And I guess I've never been somebody who's been in, I've always been the outlier in terms of somebody who's been into the, dressing up my Spartan or dressing up anything. Like my Spartan still looks, I tell people, I tell people I do it to hustle them. It still looks like a newbie Spartan. Like somebody just kind of just started playing the game.
It's the default sales trick on Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, so it's like they're like, oh, look at this newbie. Let's go after him. He's not wearing anything, and then you get him. No, but I will say that this and the reason I asked that question because I was thinking about it as they're talking about it, and I'm looking at the different armor, which actually looks pretty cool. Like some of the armors they've shown so far, and just thinking about. There's so many different customizations, and I think that's what's different. Like a lot of times when you have these, you get something new, it's like it's not really you. It's whatever the developers give you. This seems like you can actually put your own artistic, creative ability into it a little bit. And I think that adds a different element, just the personalization, because it does seem highly customizable. And then the other aspect is that since it doesn't go away, there is that feeling like you were just saying, that I can stack these and maybe I just hit them all at one time. In the meantime, I just I play so much Halo anyways, I'll probably end up hitting those. But if they're going to ask me to play modes that I don't normally play and things like that, I don't know, like what they're going to ask me to do, that at least I know that's still there. It'd be like my Audible subscription that just keeps stacking up, and I forget that I have it. But at least you can go back and you can, one day when you decide you're just going to do a lot of books all at once, you have them all there, all your tokens. So it'd be the same thing in Halo. So that was something that I was going to just call out to you, Mike. I know that I don't think you are a Battle Pass guy, right?
But the way they have it set up here, I'm the most interested I've ever been, just because there is no sense of FOMO, and I can. Did they say that you can earn anything and everything without paying real money? You just have to put in the time, basically, or did I? I mean, is that the way that?
I think you have to earn everything in game, no matter if you buy it or not. So that's part of the balance.
But I mean, is there like an in-game token or point system that?
Yeah, you can't just buy everything. I know that's.
If it's like most of them, they'll give you a token for unlocking the paid stuff in the free tier. So essentially, you could unlock it without paying, but it's not going to be everything in the paid tier. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, like I'm most open to try it now, just because, you can go back to the first season pass or battle pass, and I don't know. I just, that whole flexibility, I really like it. It like respects me more as a player or consumer, if that makes sense. Lets me make the decisions when I want to, instead of like forcing a thing.
Instead of making a job.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't want to be married to any game because I don't know what I want to. Like, I don't want to be concerned that I played something else. I played Mass Effect tonight instead of Halo. That type of thing. Like, that's. I don't know. I see that enough. Like, I was disappointed, speaking of Mass Effect, that I didn't get the what do you call it? The spaceship, the Mass Effect spaceship in No Man's Skies, stuff like that.
Yeah. You and I were talking about that.
A few weeks, and it was a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I just did not have the time, and so stuff like that. It annoys me. So I'm happy to see it.
If you get old jaded gamers like myself and Mike, to give it a try, maybe you are onto something. We'll see if that does catch on. And I think it is really smart though with Microsoft, obviously, like with Game Pass and stuff like that. You don't want people to feel like any game's a job, really.
And they are hypersensitive right now to coming off well. They do not want any PR disasters, because they know it just seems to hit them so much harder than it does anyone else. So they're like hyper focused on being the absolute best bargain in value, and as nice as a big evil corporation can seem.
And a couple points too. I think my hope is that this becomes the standard for at least all of Xbox Game Studios games that have battle passes or season passes, whatever you want to call it. Because again, with 76, that's one of the worst things about it, is that it's coming up to the end of the season. My wife just started playing with me 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So she's having to rush through and make it a job to be able to get to 100, where it would be nice to be able to. And it's a little bit different with 76 because those seasons are free. So you don't pay anything extra to get them. But it would still be nice to actually earn that content, after that season's passed. But the other thing, per Game Pass, that discussion, Phil has said multiple times, like, contrary to what a lot of people would imply otherwise, they don't want a ton of people playing only one game. And so having a system like this where it doesn't force you to play it all the time is beneficial to you as a gamer and to developers who sign on to the Game Pass. So I mean, it's kind of a win-win. And like you said, Abe, I mean, I've got, so there's a Japanese word that kind of, it's like you buy too many books, but you don't read those books. That's like me with games, and it's Sundoku. And so it's like I've got that for games where like I mean, I showed Mike the other day how much freaking storage I need on my Xbox, and because, and that's with largely without Game Pass. With Game Pass, it's getting worse, and not feeling like I have to be married to the game, to one game, to have to access all that content is such a relieving feeling that I hope that other developers outside of Xbox start looking at as well, because you know, there's so many practices right now in the industry that don't respect you as a gamer, and I think that this is a start to hopefully a wave of other developers doing the same.
Yeah, and none of them are a charity, right? But to your point, this is the fits the business model, and that's always the interesting thing when people say they're going to throw just a bunch of gas games in there, and that's all you're going to play. It's like, well, then why would you even need a subscription if you're just going to play a couple? You're just going to play a couple games out of your job. Just buy that. And,
the more variety there, the more it benefits them. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, but you were asking, I think it was Mike, you were asking about the like how the rewards and things like that work. You see here, and they did have some of that in the update today. So it says, what are some of the various ways players earn and unlock customization elements? And it says, out of the gate, players can get starting gear and get rewards from the free Battle Pass track and paid Battle Pass track challenges, skill rewards, event reward track, legacy rewards, and be rewarded for some campaign action. So that's interesting. Certain weeks and days have some significance inside and outside the game, so you set aside pieces for players to log in and claim. Then he says, can you elaborate a little bit more on why our Battle Pass is going to be different and, dare I say, better than most that are out there right now? He says, we're working hard to ensure that the Battle Pass isn't a grind for players. We want it to be a supplemental reward stream for the time you're already putting into the game. I, for one, can't stand it when I'm playing a game just to complete the Battle Pass. It feels like a chore to me. So, yeah, and then then everything else we just talked about, they're going to be permanent and all that stuff. So yeah, just kind of reiterating on that stuff, Mike. Anything else like from this update today? Like, is there some things here that you guys want to just drill into? As maybe the last couple of topics for today's show. What really? Oh, go ahead.
The second one will be something that is a lot broader for us to discuss. But the first one was, and I missed this earlier when we were discussing the first part, is they're bringing in events. And so they're going to have these timed mini and larger scale events within multiplayer. Potentially, they talk about things that you can do in the campaign as additional means of unlocking
like
additional
the
rewards.
samurai armor was, I think, an event, as they said.
Right. Yeah.
A campaign event?
Yeah, they mentioned different elements or different things that you can do in the campaign. They're going to have different scale events with different tied to different modes that you can complete for specific rewards.
Yeah,
as
it'll
well.
probably be like kill 500 grunts in campaign.
Right. I was going to say,
Step
think of
an event.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Similar to
nothing
what
like
MCC does.
similar to what? I'm sorry.
MCC, how they've got the season rewards.
Oh,
like
okay.
kill.
I'm picturing like an event like in Forza Horizon 4 where there's some kind of like big marker, and
Yeah, they
even though it's not open
modifiers.
shared world, but I was just trying to figure out how that.
No.
It could,
Okay,
it could
good,
be
good.
an event skull modifier you put on. Like that could be
Right.
something they could do. They've had, it's a thing. It's a thing they've had where you choose to have a skull on, and you can choose to have this event skull on and get a reward for playing that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the second thing was the huge updates they're doing to Waypoint and the companion apps. We talked about Destiny earlier, and that's something that I always thought Destiny did really well, was the companion app where you can still manage your inventory, you can still make your customizations, do your shaders, and all that kind of stuff from within the app. They're going to be essentially doing that on, for Infinite. So, accessing your Spartan customizations, your progression, gameplay stats, all that stuff is going to be built into the companion apps. Apparently it's going to apply to not just Infinite as well. It's going to be for Halo 5 and Master Chief, which that is a pretty sweet thing, because you remember when Destiny 2 came out, they had to gut the Destiny 1 code from the companion app, so it only worked for Destiny 2. This is going to be cross-platform, cross-game, and that's from a coding standpoint, that's a massive undertaking. So it's pretty intriguing how they're doing that. But yeah, I mean, it's nice that because I don't know if you guys did this when the original Halos were out. Like, I used to go to, after 2 and 3 and beyond, like I used to go to Bungie's website and just check my stats, check my Carnage reports from map, especially when I'd be playing with my college buddies. And
I still do it at
that time.
Yeah, I still do it.
5.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
the
exactly.
heat map system from part 2, where it kind of
Yeah.
maps out the
Where
multiplayer
you got
mode.
your kills and everything.
Yeah. I absolutely love that stuff. It was so cool, because especially when you check it out like right after, when it's fresh in your mind, you can kind of like see the story of your match play. Yeah, I totally dug that.
Yeah, so it's cool to see that some of that, so that you can still access your Halo when you can't play your Halo. It's nice. It's coming back.
Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting to see how they start integrating all this stuff, between the cloud, PC, console, and what types of things that you'll be able to do when you're away from where you prefer to play it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some good points. Then going back to what was it you were mentioning before? You were talking about the
events and
the events. So I want to just touch on that really quickly. Does anybody think there's any possibility? Have we even got a hint right now that there would be any sort of post game anything in Halo, or we think it's just going to be a straight campaign and then it's done? Has anybody said anything about that?
They haven't said anything. The way it's structured, there could be, but there's been nothing hinted at yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it'd be a traditional post game like what we see in something like Destiny, or like your traditional end game content. But I mean, being able to still explore some of those elements.
There was one thing Ursula pointed out to us, which was essentially. I gotta find it again real quick. Cut you off before I had. It was pretty much your Spartan becoming a part of the story of Halo Infinite.
Oh, it's
Yeah, which sort of read to me.
cooperative or something.
Yeah. Like it reads as, here it is. At the center of our plans is a goal to deeply root your multiplayer character in the larger Halo universe and give them a vital, active role in Halo's story moving forward. How exactly we're going to do this in the seasons and years ahead, well, we're not ready to share details yet. It
That's
reads
right.
to me like, some
Spartan Ops.
sort of evolution of Spartan Ops. Yeah. Some big mix of co-op, maybe PvP, like this way of getting your multiplayer character into something more, which Titanfall eventually did with their Frontier Defense mode when they brought that back, where your Titans and your pilot loadouts and all that stuff was, represented in that mode. So that's what I've always wanted, is some sort of big PvE co-op end game thing added into a Halo game. So I have a reason to both replay the story because it's fun, and I've got this repeatable thing I can just come back to for that really fun gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was looking for. And I was kind of digging through these comments and trying to multitask through that to see if there was anything that really sort of drop in some hints on that. But, I think it's pretty common amongst most people that are big Halo fans to consider Halo pretty replayable, especially the classic Bungie ones, right? Like just the way the sandbox works, and it is fun to go back and play the game and increase the difficulty and try to beat it again. And it'd be interesting with the skull tie-ins and things like that, like they are already doing with MCC. But like so far it feels like everything we've learned that's been sort of unveiled with Halo Infinite is taking things that were good in Halo, and if they're bringing them back, they're not just bringing them back. They're kind of trying to move that. Yeah, they're moving that ball forward, and so this is probably a different show. It's not part of the update. It's more of this is a speculation tinfoil hat thing, and it's like, you know, and this goes back to like just that flyover. Like you look at that environment, it's like, whoa, you could change up that sandbox over and over and over again, right? Like throw enemies in different places, different enemies, different weapons.
Yeah, they've talked about how like what you have will change who's there, what time of day it is will change who's there.
Right.
Yeah, like they've got elements already like in the works.
Yeah, and they've talked about taking over outposts and stuff before, and you know, if you zoom in on one of the corners of that drone flyover shot, you can see Greg that's dead, but you have to imagine like
Craig,
so does that mean
get his
that
name right?
I'm all Greg.
Huh?
Get his name right.
Craig, I mean. But I'm trying to keep my thoughts in check here. So like what I mean by that is like is that outpost, did they take it over? And then that's what brought in the Marines. Right. You know, and then does that mean that the brutes possibly can take it back over? Because I thought it was kind of funny how those brutes and Marines like right next door to each other, totally oblivious. So it does make me wonder whether or not, they can take each other over and battle, and you can see stuff like that off in the far distance, because that's one of the things that used to be really fun for me in past Halos is seeing two other characters or enemies fight each other and stuff like that. So just seeing that kind of adds to like the world being more alive and reactive.
Yeah. If they do it in the right way too, like one of the sometimes the issue I have with Destiny is as much as the combat's really solid, sometimes it doesn't really feel like the sandbox is dynamic enough, and to keep playing it. I always like I might not even mind grinding a lot in Halo just because
you shut your mouth.
That is the one game. Well, I'm not talking about like grinding for like experience or something, but I wouldn't mind an excuse to keep going back to it over and over because it is the one game that I can finish playing. It was a few months ago. I played through the entire series, front to back on Legendary, and it was like after I finished, it's like I wouldn't mind playing one again, but I have a backlog, so I'm not going to do that. It's just one of those things that doesn't really age that much because it is fun to try to get better at getting through scenarios and try to find different ways to get through scenarios. And they've already, again, when we talked about this earlier, but through some of the updates, they've talked about how they brought back that dynamic gameplay and is going to even expand on it and move that ball forward. And so, I'm speculating right now. I'm like, this is low hanging fruit almost. It feels like there's a chance, I think, for, out of any first-person shooter or maybe any single-player game, there's not many that are more replayable. I'll go replay Halo. I'll replay like a lot of the Souls games, but there's not that many games that I feel like have that sort of campaign where it's like, okay, I'm just going to go do that again, because of the gameplay. And part of it is because it's more dynamic, and it's going to be even more dynamic. So I'm going to be curious to see if we're just going to be waiting for the new DLC, or if even before that DLC is ready, if they're going to do things that, let's say mod it, right? Like change up things and give you an excuse to go back. But that's speculation. That's just me, You said a few things and it got me dreaming.
As long as the AI, the replayability for me on the campaign is going to be a lot about the AI, the way that the simulations work, the way that the AI reacts, and how firefights play out and stuff like that. That's what makes Halo replayable for me. And then of course you add in friends, and that's one thing that I hope with this. Typically for me, when I play like 4-player co-op, I love it. I absolutely love it, but it does take away some of the difficulty. Mm-hmm. Like it's
totally.
Even when you got like different skulls on that make it even more tough. I wonder how that's going to be tackled here in terms of just overall design. I don't know.
Especially since everybody. Sorry.
They can add.
I know where this is going. Go on, Jesse. Trust me, I think I'm much rather hear what you have to say.
The engine changes allow them to add so many more AI that you can tackle it that way finally, where you can just have more to fight when there's more people.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the things.
Yeah, Abe,
Jesse, you cut me off. I was really just ready to let Mike have it. I was like, especially when it's like, of course it's going to get harder for you, especially when everybody you play with is better than you. But anyways, keep going.
I knew it. I just
it's a lot harder when you're staring at the corner.
I just get distracted too easily.
Hey, I pulled a mic
bird.
last night. I was looking out the window on Cairo Station. I was like, man, just look at how the light refracts on the corner of the glass.
Yeah, that's me. But yeah,
it's the water for me normally.
Oh man, you know what? That I think is the true test of Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
How does your water look, and how does the dead body react to it? Yeah,
Damn straight.
And it's like more to like what Jesse was saying earlier. Like that's one of the things that I hope. I get the feeling we're not going to see it now because the draw distance and that overhead seem really good, like really good, really solid. Yeah. Not, and they had kind of like this almost AstroTurf type texture or shader that was off in the grass in the distance that gave you the impression of grass without actually rendering grass. Like it was really well done. I would love to see enemies scurrying about or going on different patrols and stuff off in the distance. And in
wildlife.
Yeah, in wild, exactly. Yeah. I mean, with what you were saying, Abe, earlier about it, the game meeting expectations, I think it's going to meet expectations of, Deliver Hope or Discover Hope trailer. But I do hope that they still have some ambitions to incorporate the stuff that we saw in the announcement trailer, the in-engine trailer. Like, I'm not expecting that per se, but just like what Daniel just said with the wildlife. Like, I would like to see herds of animals off in the distance and things like that. And you would think parts of that would be required because, there's going to have to be some range of, draw distance with stuff like that if you're going to see Marines with smoke that are calling for help and stuff like that. So it's the stuff in the distance that kind of really sell the world on top of what we're interacting with directly that I wonder how they're going to balance that and how or if that's going to improve when they drop last gen. Like stuff like that, I can picture them really being able to go much further next gen or new gen.
I would even wonder if that's something you got to wait for because to me that feels like even on PC, they've already scaled crowd density, right? So why wouldn't you be able to scale wildlife, especially since that helps with the immersion or the
Yeah, definitely. But you look at what they already tried in Halo 5 where anything beyond 30 feet ran at half frame rates and stuff like that. Like
it was like 2 frames, it seemed like sometimes.
Yeah. And I get why. It's a CPU saving thing. But you wonder how is that, and they did talk about pushing, like in this today's update, they talked about memory management and what they're proud to do and with the engine on last gen system. So I'm curious to see how that translates to that far reaching details.
Yep.
And I'm done with that rant. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. No, it looks like Mike's done. It's time to move on to the next thing.
Here's your chance.
No, it's some interesting things. I just had to give you crap at least once in the show, so to make sure everybody knew I was okay. So, is there anything else that from today? That, again, there's a lot of things in that article today, and they talked about the UX design, which I don't know if that's going to be terribly interesting to break down at this point in time. Is there anything else you guys wanted to hit there before we moved on to some of the community questions? By the way, if anybody in the chat has any questions, throw them out there.
I have gotten the 2 that were put in so far.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read one of those?
I would, but I don't know how to read.
Oh, okay.
All right. DS Omen asked us, do we think that old Halo maps will be showing up too much, or do you think 343 just point at MCC if we want the old stuff?
I don't think it's going to show up at all, really, outside of maybe something like Blood Gulch. like the very special types, like because a lot of people I've been watching impressions and reactions, and for whatever reason, a number of people have thought that the second map in the multiplayer trailer was Valhalla, but I don't think it's Valhalla. It's not Valhalla.
They see that Forerunner platform and the flag, and then for some reason that's the only element they need to.
That's fine, but it's not Valhalla. But if
exactly.
But if their new maps bring that type of reaction and fandom and memories and stuff, then that's a good sign. Like that's an early sign. Yeah. If you look at a map, even in quick cuts, and like, you know what, that looks like a map I was fond of. That that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I really do hope they focus on their own original stuff with some. I mean, there's gonna be some callbacks, I'm sure. But
did you watch the cannon fodder thing they put out, which was they went into like a historical deep dive of the maps they're making? So they are very focused on that history of the franchise without just pulling
retreading
old stuff.
Yeah.
I do think if there's anything old that comes back, it's 100% going to be part of an event. Like they'll build up a season. In this season, we'll be calling back to, they're calling back to Reach, so we might get a Reach map. They're calling back to, if they Halo CE, you might get a Halo CE inspired map, that type of stuff.
So that's a good call out.
In that instance, are these maps temporarily in the rotation, or are these
we don't
maps?
Know yet.
Okay,
it's a potential, but we don't have that. We'd just be speculating at that point.
Yeah. First of all, there's a couple of things about that question. Number one, it does seem one thing we did learn is that the MCC is going to continue to get support, right? And I think there's also, I mean, what they're now talking about increasing the player count. MCC. Yeah. So why are you going to be doing that if you're not going to continue to support that game with new things? And to me, that tells me that they're going to continue to support that for the long term. That's just going to continue to be part of the Xbox rotation.
They did say that MCC, they want to get it to a point where they feel good and then hand it off to community and open it up fully for modding.
Yeah, which makes sense. Because there is going to be people that's all they're going to want to play. They don't want to have anything to do with Sprint. They don't want to have anything, which I understand. The old classic Halos are still play really great, and for a lot of people, less is more. And I'm in that camp in a lot of games. I'm really excited about what I've seen so far, but I do understand the thinking around that, and so I think it's really smart because I think by 343 supporting this and then eventually opening it up to the community, allowing it to continue to just live on indefinitely, it gives them this out, or just this ability to make Halo Infinite theirs. They don't have to. I think they're less beholden, right? Because it's like, hey, you still have that, and we're still supporting that, and you have mod tools, you still have Forge, you still have all these tools to continue to build new maps and do things in that game, and we've even now expanded it to where you can put more players in it. We've given you seasons and things like that, so it does just feel like that with that support they can now move beyond it. With that said, there's going to be people that gravitate towards new Halo that still have nostalgia for old Halo, so I could see, man, like, could you think about like a Zanzibar with additional physics in it, right? Like, you remember that? Like the first time we ever saw Zanzibar, that ended up being the first map, by the way, that I ever played in matchmaking, and it was just like, whoa, you went and you saw the big thing spinning around, and I was like Mike, just getting shot while I'm looking up at the thing.
It's so pretty.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe this is a multiplayer.
Mike,
map.
They put season 7 of the Master Chief Collection out and all the fixes for the Halo CE graphics. We might have to do
is that out now?
We go through it. Yeah, it hit yesterday. We're gonna have to go through that.
Yeah, Abe, I'm kind of hoping that we get a couple, because Zanzibar is one. The Pit is classic. I think having the ability to play that with the new mechanics, with the new physics, would just be a dream come true, and of course Blood Gulch, as we mentioned earlier, it's like there are maps that I feel like
They're almost like staples.
yeah. I mean, my biggest hope is that they take some of the learnings from Five's map design and the criticisms towards those maps, and we get something that's actually that kind of set, because I can't recall a single map from Five. As much as I love that game, as much as I played the hell out of it, I can't recall a single map that stands out in the same way that Valhalla or the Pit or Zanzibar or Blood Gulch or any of those, even Beaver Creek.
Don't forget Lockout.
Yeah,
probably the closest for me is Streets, with a street map. I don't know if that makes sense. The ones with the billboards.
Yeah, and the cars on the it's multi-tiered and everything.
Yeah. That's probably the closest, and I like that map. It's really visually entertaining, impressive, but like.
But I mean, Halo 4, in my opinion, had even Haven is one of those maps that I still love to go back to. But 5, because there was so much of a focus on the UNSC, design mythos, give us some decent Forerunner and decent Covenant-based maps again, and really kind of branch out again and give us something memorable. That's my biggest hope.
Ridiculous, brutal banished maps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's battle torn, and you've got things on fire. That'd be awesome.
Parts of Marines hanging from the ceiling on meat
body parts.
Yeah.
Meat bags.
Man, I can just think of some twisted things you can do with the banished.
That's I can't even reach the keyboard. The statue of Craig, don't forget that.
There has to be a Craig
there's a statue of Craig in some map.
Have a carving in the wall of some random cave or something.
Craig.
Just
remember Craig.
Yeah. Yeah. They just they have to. I really hope they have something you discover in the world.
What if it's just this giant banished fighting arena and Craig is on the throne in the middle?
Yes.
Right?
Like Thor.
He's absolutely going to be part of the Forge stuff. You know that. There's going to be all types.
I hope they have it I hope they have a helmet where it's basically
they'll have Easter eggs,
a cardboard Craig face that and it looks like it's just taped. So there's just a bunch of Craigs going around with Craig masks.
Oh man, I forgot what the question was. All right, well, are we ready for the next one?
Yep. From Sappho. Oh, and before I get to that, there was an excellent name in the chat that had a funny comment. 8K, 120 FPS HDR RTX said, I like Cortana's daughter. Me too. And Sappho asks, with the release of Fidelity Super Resolution, do you think 343 Interactive or 343i would be looking into using it for Halo? And my answer would be, probably not.
No.
I think Xbox is going to be focused entirely on their own machine learning version of that approach to performance gains.
I mean, I can see them using it, and maybe I don't know. It's just not. We haven't seen any indication of that. We know it has a dynamic resolution.
It's just today, Jason Ronald tweeted, it's just hitting the preview GDK.
Yeah,
so it's far off. It's not something that's going to be showing up right away.
A big thing for Halo has generally been the texture work, and that's especially going to be true here. And so far, what we've seen of FSR doesn't really do any favors for the textures.
The only thing I would think of is if it was something they used for the previous gen. It definitely wouldn't be something they used for this gen.
Yeah, I mean maybe the
point.
1X. It seems to work better at higher resolutions. So I wonder if it would just make it look more soupy if you tried that on the 1S. I can't wait to see how bad it look or good. Just what I have such a morbid curiosity of how that game's going to look and run.
I mean, I imagine there's been an entire studio just working on that version of the game for 2-3 years at least now. So I think it won't be Cyberpunk because they'll add
no. I don't think that at all.
It'll be Horizon 2. Where it still played absolutely fine on the 360, but it was night and day. between the 360 and the Xbox One.
Oh, Forza Horizon 2.
Or
Right. My bad.
Yeah,
I
or
should
like
have.
Destiny,
No.
Titanfall, where you could
Man.
tell these were lesser versions.
Yeah, I mean the 360 version of Forza Horizon 2, like you had where there were like swaths of foliage and you're in a field. On the 360, it was just like grass texture. It was just flat. So I imagine we'll probably get something.
We did get one more question if you wanted, Abe.
Well, one thing I wanted to say.
Yeah,
though,
I was going to ask.
I don't think you're going to need. Now that I think about it, you're probably not going to need any like odes to Craig, because that's pretty much every brute in the Xbox One S version is probably gonna.
They'll make the Xbox One version the Craig edition.
That's the Craig edition. So, sorry.
The limited Craig edition.
I beat dead horses. I gotta start. I gotta find more jokes. That's the problem.
You're a dad, so
yeah, I'm a dad. Yeah, I find one joke and I just keep telling it. All right, keep going, you guys. What was the next question?
Go ahead, Jesse. Just in case it's not the one I'm looking at.
Well, Shingi asks, do you guys think Halo stories featuring characters who aren't Chief will live inside Infinite?
I hope so.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so moving forward, having offshoots, especially with your multiplayer character, because like the multiplayer definitely seems with the Academy and all this stuff to have more personality to it. So if they're going back to a Spartan Ops story style of thing, not Spartan Ops, but if they're going into this co-op PvE expansion stuff, then yeah, it doesn't have to be, and most likely wouldn't be Chief very often. If anything, he's the once every few 3-4 years big sequel style expansion, and then they've got a bunch of little things that are your multiplayer character.
Well, we've talked about in the past of like ODST style expansions that bridge the gap between the major iterations or expansions. So there's no reason why they can't use your multiplayer character for those types of mini campaigns or what have you.
Hey Mike, what about Halo Infinite Team Osiris? Yeah, bring them back, baby. Everyone loved them.
I wouldn't be opposed to it as long as they do them justice, but I see them being relocated to like an Arbiter level side character.
They essentially broke the team up in a book. So
yeah, I'd like to see Blue Team come back, if anybody. Having Fred and Kelly and Linda.
Yeah, I'm more interested because they brought them in kind of abruptly, but not abruptly for people like us that are familiar with the lore. But if you're just focused on the game, you're like, who the F are these guys? And why do they seem to care so much about Master Chief?
Bungie told us he was the last Spartan.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I always thought Master Chief was the last Spartan until, I don't know. I didn't read the book, so.
Thanks,
Bungie. Right in Fall of Reach. Fall of Reach came out before CE. And it...
Yep.
There's a good point by Shingi, like what's up with Spirit of Fire, too, because they're bringing in the brutes, and their entire thing started in Halo Wars 2, and they're like, will any of that come in? Probably not now, but like down the road, that's another area you can go, and there's also a bunch of Spartan 2s that are a part of Halo Wars 2, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that, to me, it's a missed opportunity if they don't. Obviously, they need to go back and need to make sure they get this story with Master Chief right, and really focus on that. Make sure everybody has that desire quenched, because Halo 5 didn't do that. And now that we think about it, it's been what's it been? It's going to be 9 years since we had a proper Master Chief focused game, really, right? So almost a decade. Am I getting that right?
I think you got 3 missions in 2015. That was enough.
No, it isn't. Yeah. So it wasn't. No, Halo 5 doesn't count. So 9 years. Yeah, 6 plus 3. I still do my math. You guys
At least the Halo Master Chief story novels have been okay.
It's funny. This is probably another topic for another day. There's been a couple articles that have come out over the last week or so that have been talking about killing Master Chief out so they can expand the universe. They don't have to do that. Yeah, first of all, you can't do that. He's like the Mario, just cooler.
Kill Mario.
Yeah, you can kill Mario off before you kill Master Chief off. No, you don't have to do that. I think they need to develop him, and they need to hit this one out of the park for the Master Chief story. to kind of bring that back. But it's also a missed opportunity if they don't try to expand the universe at all in terms of bringing other characters in there. They did a really good job with Buck, right? Like with the ODST, and I think that's remembered pretty well. And it's because, and I think they framed it the right way. They didn't try to frame it as this is like some
replacement.
Yeah, like it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a replacement. It wasn't. It also wasn't a bait and switch, and that's what I think a lot of people felt 5 was. So if you do that with like DLC, and you could probably even go back to some of the, like Locke is supposed to have a backstory to him. Like as far as I understood, he has, there's things that happened that could have made him interesting. They just didn't develop him in 5. It was just pretty poor storytelling in the game.
But he had the one line. He's not the only reason you're. Just like trying, like they literally had one throwaway line
because of him. That was the line.
Yeah, you're not the only one who's here because of him. And it's like, okay, and then nothing.
Right.
You're not the only one who's here because of him.
There's
writer's strike.
And that's the point, though. It's like there's opportunity to develop these characters, make them something more so you have more people within the universe that you actually care about, or can be that people want to play as. So. I would say to answer the question, I don't know. There hasn't been any leaks on that, but it seems like it's a missed opportunity if they don't. So, and there's going to be a lot of chances with the fact that this game is going to get ongoing support for a while, and should be having new content regularly. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that, you guys?
I like turtles.
Yeah.
I like Craig.
Yeah, I like Craig's too.
So another question. This is probably gonna be quick because we've talked about this plenty on the show. So, Madeline Garcia says, "What do you guys expect out of this new campaign? It to be good."
A lot of dead Marines.
Yeah,
just hundreds of dead Marines all over the place.
You mean ammo carriers?
Even in the cutscene, Chief just finds a floating pistol clip. So
yeah, that was made for me. I kill all the Marines so I can get their ammo.
I've never killed a Marine, you monster.
That music was so sad.
I mean, he was dead already. I mean, it's just going to.
So they're going to be doing these cutscenes, and Chief's all worried about Marines and trying to protect them, and then this cutscene ends, and Dan just starts mowing them down. The assault rifle.
Yeah,
it's full ammo. It's just he wants the ammo on the ground in case he needs it later.
You clearly didn't watch the stream last night.
Well, it was funny because you were doing it on purpose, and then Blast the Base was doing it by accident. So just like both sides, they were getting shot nonstop. They're just like, meh.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. I think that's almost like a whole show. When you talk about the campaign, I think from a high level, I expect it to be more the story to be a lot more focused, like they've kind of already told us. I do hope there's not as much exposition as we got in that one trailer. Like, I don't need somebody to tell me why I'm here. Be a little bit more subtle. With that.
That's definitely the beginning of the game, trying to start it all. Yeah. So yeah,
just
that whole thing. Yeah, I love that though. I love that campaign cutscene
between.
Yeah, because if that's truly after the Discover Hope trailer, which it does appear to be. But I think the Cortana scene was completely much further. I get the feeling the Cortana scene was.
They cut things out because there's a hard cut at one point, which they're not going to be doing. So they definitely are still holding things back big time.
Yeah. So we talked about this last week too, and I forgot about that because we didn't really touch on it this week. But it does look like Halo's going with a darker story, or a little bit more mature story. Obviously you see with all the bodies and stuff floating around, and just kind of the tone of it. It seems like they really are trying to set that tone that it's going to be a little bit more, a little less comic bookish, I guess. A little less Marvel.
You start the game by having lost and assuming almost everyone is dead. So the whole Discover Hope is this is starting in a really, really crappy place for the UNSC. Yeah. So,
well, I wonder how the Discover Hope cutscene, because that was said to be the opening cutscene, has changed or updated, because you hear in this trailer, you have a pistol with one bullet. Right. I mean, we all know what that means. The guy was keeping it for himself. And, it was obviously he was getting depressed and stuff like that. And he's been out there for a while, because you can see his beard grow and the batteries die, and you can see things in the background that frost over or look like they might be disheveled. So, like, yeah, much more mature tone is a great way to describe it.
Yeah. They got a sad dad in there. They know what the winning form is.
They know what everybody wants. They know how to win over the Sony gamer. No. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be darker. I think it's going to be more focused. We liked everything we saw with the gameplay. We already know the physics look cool. The environments are wide. So there's a lot of potential, right? They just got to...
hopefully we get a Vidoc showing more like before launch. Yeah. That's going to be the clincher.
They have a real ramp up, because they didn't say this was the last Inside Infinite either. I think they're going to keep pushing things, and hopefully eventually they start talking about the Forge and what's in it, and we can have our Forge master Sika Mechanico on. So
I think they'll probably wait until after they get the the flighting out for the multiplayer, and then they'll start talking about Forge probably.
That reminds me, they did say Phil was on that podcast that I can't remember the name of, Drop Frames, and gave we do know the rough 3 to 4 week time frame.
Yeah,
so it really feels like they're just, let's not put it out the exact same. If it's going to be November, December, miss Call of Duty, or if it's going to be September, October, make sure we can absolutely hit that and not push it back, because it's so close. Yeah. So those would be the two things I think about that. They have the date.
Yep. Expect the flighting soon. I think that's what the hints have all been at. And
yep.
Yeah, they've updated the site, so now it's like a per game basis. They've repeatedly said, make sure you're signed up on HaloWaypoint.com with your Xbox account or Microsoft account to be in the flighting if you want to be invited.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot for them to discuss before this game releases. They've only touched on Big Team Battle, and so we have an idea how that core part of it plays. And we saw a little bit of the campaign gameplay last year, but we still really haven't seen it. They haven't really shown us the AI in action. So let's see if they scaled any of that back, or if it's going to be there like they kind of hinted, or not hinted, but promised a little over a year ago. And obviously Forge, I think, is going to be huge. There's probably going to be other modes, because again, it's everything they've been showing has been evolved. So you're going to expect some sort of replacement for Warzone, probably.
Yep.
That should be. And let's just think about it. If they're talking about the big scale battles in MCC, why wouldn't you have big scale battles in this one? So there's going to be something going on here, and so there's a lot that we'll be uncovering over the next few weeks. I think what's going to be interesting is we'll talk about this maybe in the next episode, is kind of like what our feelings are of the identity of this game and things like that. So I think that leads to a really interesting discussion, because it's mixing so many different elements and things, but. They haven't really solidified exactly. There's a lot of things we're making assumptions on right now, and there's some things they show that were exciting, but there's probably more we don't know about Halo Infinite at this point, 6 months or 5 months out from release than that we do. So it should still be fun over the next few months. All right. Any other thoughts, you guys? No. If Mike has nothing to say, that means that it's time to close shop. All right, guys.
I did, but I forgot it.
Yeah. Let's go ahead then. Who wants to do the sign off today? Give everybody reminders. You want to do this, Daniel?
No.
Okay, so
totally
Mike knows. Go ahead and do the sign off.
First of all, thank you everyone for watching, or who will watch this later. We appreciate you all. We have a Patreon. Definitely check out our Patreon if you'd like to help us create awesome Xbox content. We have an awesome main podcast that runs every Sunday. Definitely check them out. And then we also have a website and a forum with a lot of awesome people on there as well with a lot of discussion. So hit the like button. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you guys.
Yeah, and thank you guys in the chat too. We appreciate having you here and interacting.
I'll get one last question. Eternal Umbra, what do you feel about themed armor from other franchises? I think they might do it with fellow first-party stuff, especially starting with Doom.
Oh, I can definitely see a Doom. Yeah, I can. I mean,
I want you to look like a pirate.
It looks Doomslayer-ish already in the initial expression with how thick Master Chief looked. That's
well, and just wait at all the options I'll have when I get WB. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
And
Just kidding. But seriously, I got it.
That,
We'll have to see
thank
what
you,
else they
everybody,
add.
for watching.
yeah.